Hello, everyone, and welcome to another great week here. I am Sarah Maslowski with Moving to Georgia. Excited to be back on your screens and sharing some great information with you, and of course, answering all of your questions. I hope you are doing fantastic. Please let me know where you're watching from. I love to hear and see how many people we're reaching and where you're watching from. So I'm happy to be back with you. This last time we were scheduled to meet, I was actually on a trip vacation out to Yosemite, California. Um, Going out to Yosemite for the very first time, and that was super exciting. I've never been out there, and gosh, that was so gorgeous, and it was really cool to see some different parts of California, and I've got some thoughts on it. I can definitely understand why we have a lot of folks moving from California here to Georgia. And it got me thinking, about some of the things that are so different from other states to being here in Georgia, and some great clients that are currently in town right now from California who are going to be retiring here in Georgia, and had a great conversation with them today, kind of talking about some of the differences that they noticed. And it reminded me, like, hey, we need to talk about a little bit of some of the things that you need to know about buying houses here in Georgia and how they're different. And of course, we've got lots of great videos on the channel about that, but it's fun to kind of add to and revisit. Oh, there's Darla and Victor. Welcome, welcome. Y'all are joining us here. And those are the clients that we're talking about that are relocating from California. So wanting to talk about, what are the differences and what are some things that you need to know before you buy a house here in Georgia? Because as you know, and as you've seen, there's lots of different things all across um, the country of how houses are built differently, and things are just different. I didn't know how different things were until I started working with a lot of great clients just like you that are watching, and learning about the differences in buying a house all across the country. So if you're joining us and you have any questions about making a move here to Georgia or questions about the housing market, go ahead and ask those in the comments. We'll make sure that we get to them. If you have any thoughts or opinions about what we're talking about, I would love to hear from you as well. So let's just get into it. So first, let's just talk about what you can expect in moving to Georgia. And the first thing, and this happens, these first two things that we're going to talk about, almost unprompted, this comes up in conversation with every single one of our clients that we work with. And that is the fact of just how green everything is here in Georgia. Um, I took this for granted. I didn't realize this until I recently went and visited California, and y'all are right. Um, Comparatively to other states, especially on the West Coast, Georgia is very, very green. And I personally am someone that absolutely loves that. And I don't think I could ever live in a place where there wasn't a bunch of trees around and a lot of greenery. I need that. Victor, who's out here from California right now, says it's so green. And yeah, and here's the thing, it stays green year round. So we have a ton of evergreens. I say it's going to stay green year round. Of course, we have fall and winter, and you have leaves that fall off the tree, but you still have quite a bit of greenery around you because of those evergreens. And then, of course, obviously, it's greener in the spring, summer, that sort of thing. We've got DeTruth watching. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us again tonight. I appreciate it. All right, so it's going to be very green. You can expect that. You can also expect, and this is one thing that I personally noticed, and I've had a handful of clients talk about this, compared to the areas that I've traveled in other states. Our interstates and our streets, for the most part, I'm not saying that there's not some places that are not, are very clean. Not a whole lot of trash on the side of the road, not a ton of graffiti. And that was a little bit surprising to me when I was out, or when I visited other states. That stood out to me, especially in California. Victor and Darla, y'all can pipe in and tell me how that kind of compares to your part of California. And maybe this might just be regionally, but I definitely feel that for the most part, our roads are very well taken care of. Not necessarily the asphalt. There's definitely a lot of road work going on and a lot of areas that need to be repaved, but just the sides of the roads, that sort of thing, is something that you can expect. Another thing that you can expect here in Georgia is just how nice everyone is. So this is the second thing that almost unprompted 100% of my clients at some point in us working together, whenever they come out here for a visit, they mention hands down of just how nice everyone is. Now, that's not to say that we don't have some a-holes here, just like we do, or just like everyone has everywhere. And, uh, you're going to experience this being at the grocery store, from, going out to eat, your neighbors, driving around a neighborhood. People are going to smile and wave to you, ask you how you are. And I had another client recently. They had a family, and daughter was like in middle school, and they were out, and the daughter asked the mom, like, "Mom, why is everyone being so nice?" Like, she just thought it was so strange, and they were from South Florida. And I thought that was very interesting that even someone as young as 12, 13 years old is picking up on just how nice everyone is. Oh, yes, Darla, this is a great point. Much more polite here in traffic, and the roads are very well maintained. Traffic can be busy, but California is still worse. So, um, I think it's funny that Darla mentioned how nice everyone is driving, or much more polite and courteous. I was recently in New York for an event, and obviously in New York City, those drivers are notorious for not being nice, but gosh, the honking of the horns all the time, that would just drive me nuts. Victor says, yes, our highways are pristine. Traffic doesn't seem as bad on the freeways, but the streets are crowded. Yes, 100% would agree with that. So yeah, you get a little bit more beauty here in Georgia, along with the nice people. Dan, the man, is watching us. Hey, Dan, nice to see you. Okay, so here's another thing that you of what to expect. And Dan, who's a great mortgage provider, loan officer here, can speak on this. Closings here in Georgia, on average, take about 30 days. They can happen faster, they can happen longer. And for the most part, sellers are expecting a 30-day closing. Unless the home is vacant and you're paying with cash, obviously they would like to close as quickly as possible. And the reason that I bring this up is that in other parts of the country, in some northern states, out in California, a transaction can take a lot longer because there's a lot more red tape that is involved. So that's another great thing that I've learned from working with so many great clients, of things that are different in different parts of the country. Now, speaking of closings, this is a big one that I didn't realize was such a big difference. And that is, when you actually go to the closing, it is going to be both the buyer, typically, both the buyer side and the seller side. We're all going to be at a table together, signing our paperwork at the same time. And some of my buyers, whenever we've gotten ready for closing, I'm like, okay, well, we're going to see the sellers there. And they're like, wait, what? Sellers are going to be there? Isn't that weird? Isn't that awkward? And I'm not going to lie, there's been a handful of transactions where, when things have not been very good between the buyers and the sellers, or we've had difficult sellers, it is a little bit awkward. It can be, but 9 times out of 10, it's really fantastic because you get so much great information from the sellers, getting a chance to ask them, hey, what do we need to know about? Is your house a trick-or-treating house neighborhood? Do you get a lot of traffic on Halloween? All those kind of like ins and outs that you don't quite know. And also sellers will tell you some really great insight on some neighbors. And they'll say, oh, whenever you go to put up Christmas lights, know that there's a special outlet here that does this. And you just don't get that unless you're face to face with sellers. So it can be a really, really, really great thing. And it's nice, for the sellers to kind of meet the buyers that are getting their house, but it's more so for efficiency purposes for the closing attorney. And the byproduct is that we get to benefit from it on the buying side, of getting a chance to ask all of those really great questions. So if you're just joining us, welcome. We're talking about all the things that you can expect when buying a house here in Georgia. And we're also going to go into the negative things of what you can expect or that you need to be on the lookout for. So make sure you stick around for that. If you have any questions, comments about making a move or what's going on in the real estate market right now, let me know in the comments. We'll make sure that we get to those questions. If you're just joining us, say hi. Let us know where you're watching from. But yeah, so we're talking about the differences and what you can expect. So diving back into it about what you can expect here. So you're going to have both buyers and sellers at closing. Um, Here's another thing that was kind of surprising to me. Here in Georgia, especially in the metro Atlanta area, not all counties or cities include trash pickup in your county paid tax services. So we have a lot of, not a lot, but there's, some options for private companies that you can pay. Typically it's between $25 to $30 a month, and they're going to come pick up your trash every single week. A lot of them also offer recycling. So some areas it's included in your property taxes. Some areas, some counties, a lot of counties, it is something that you are going to pay a separate company to come do. And whenever you are buying a home and we're helping you do that, we're going to help coordinate those services for you and get you all that great information. But just know that it's not always 100% included in your utilities provided by the county. So that is something that is different from other areas. I'm curious, is trash pickup included where you are? And so I guess if you don't do trash pickup, you can take your trash. They have trash collection places. I don't know what the actual name of those places are. I'm sure there's a word for it. In recycling centers where you can go and drop off your trash. But let's be honest, who wants to carry trash in your car? Unless maybe you have a pickup truck, but even then, I don't know. I would much rather pay the $25 a month and wheel my trash out to the curb. Hey, Jane. Thanks for joining us. Yes, Jane and Lynn are going to be here soon from Florida. We're excited about their purchase and move here to Georgia. Okay, so another thing to expect whenever you are here in Georgia looking at houses, especially here in the North Metro Atlanta area, you can expect to see some steeper driveways. Now, in my opinion, this is my definition of a steep driveway. And you're going to have a lot of driveways here that have somewhat of a slope, and that's not always the case that it's going to be flat. So a slight slope, to me, that's not steep. This is a driveway that's pretty steep. And of course, you have steeper driveways that are available to you. And the reason that we have so many sloped or steeper driveways is just because of the terrain here. It's not flat. We are at the base of the Appalachian Mountains. And so you're going to have hills, and especially homes that are on basements are typically going to have a little bit more of a sloped driveway. So don't be surprised if having a flat driveway is something that's super important to you. That's a great conversation for us to have so that we can make sure that we are pointing you and giving you really good options for that. Good question from Daily Tabs. Is trash pickup a county or city service? That's going to depend on where you're located in the county. So if you are if you're located within the city limits, the city may provide trash services. Or if you're in the county may provide trash services. Gwinnett County, for example, if you live in Gwinnett County, they have trash service for the county. If you live in Beaufort City, however, you have to pay for your own trash service. So it just kind of varies. And Beaufort City is in Gwinnett County. So everyone's a little bit different. We need to look into that for you and make sure that we get that done for you. Darla says out in California, they're paying about $45 a month for your service. So, okay, that's good that, it's other people are paying elsewhere. And here's another thing that's going to be cheaper in Georgia. It's going to be your trash pickup. Daily Tabs stayed in an Airbnb that had a steep driveway. There's been some driveways where we've pulled up to them. Sometimes listing photos can be deceiving. You know, if you can't get a Google Street view of a house, you don't 100% know how steep sometimes driveways are until you pull up to that house. And I'm not going to lie, there's been some houses that I've met clients at to go show and look at, and I see that driveway and I'm like, oh, I am not driving my car up that driveway. I will just walk up the hill. And, you know, sometimes you drive up to it and I look at the buyers, I'm like, is this one an immediate no? So just know that if you are open to a steep driveway, resale wise, that is going to be a challenge. So know that. Okay. What else can you expect? Oh, here's a great one. I was speaking to a really great client who was thinking about moving from Florida here to Georgia. And one of the things that she told me was, oh, by the way, just wanted to let you know, we don't like hardwood floors or laminate flooring. We only like tile. So please just send us those. And I said, okay, great. I understand. You're from Florida where majority of the houses have tile floors like this one. And this is incredibly rare, especially here in like middle North Georgia. Almost all of your homes here, unless an owner has modified the house, almost all of your homes here are either going to have hardwoods or laminate floors, especially in the main living areas. And then it might be a little bit more common to have carpet in the living spaces, so bedrooms, or hardwoods or laminate flooring. But it's incredibly rare here to have a living space that has tile floors. And I think, you know, good question as to why. I guess it's more so just the traditional style of houses here and what's considered normal here versus down in Florida. So that's just something to keep in mind of what you can expect when you're looking at houses here in Georgia. A lot of builders now and a lot of new construction homes that you'll see, sometimes you can't even get an option of real hardwood floors. Almost always now they're going towards this type of laminate LVP type flooring. It's really great for dogs, kids, all those things. It holds up to wear and tear pretty well. And it's a little bit more cost effective. Even, you know, $1 million, $2 million homes that I've seen, they've had LVP flooring and not real hardwoods. So just something to keep in mind as you are thinking about making a move and browsing houses online and getting to know what is normal and not normal here in Georgia. So yes, no tile floors. Here's another thing that often comes up with clients, and that is basements. Oftentimes when I'm talking with clients and strategizing with them and learning about what they're looking for in their home, and when we talk about basements, they're like, oh, I do not want a basement. And I'm like, okay, can you tell me more about that? And oftentimes they're like, I do not want to live in a dark hole or a scary basement. And usually my reaction is like, okay, don't worry, I got you. All of our basements here are walkout basements. And so this picture is showing you the back of a house. And you can tell, I don't know if y'all can see my mouse, but you can tell the front of the house is like level with the front yard. And then the bottom level that you're seeing here on this back picture, that is the basement. So you have windows. Usually you're going to have a full wall of windows. Sometimes it's on the side of the house. Most often it's on the back of the house. And so you're getting a lot of light down there. So a lot of people will finish out the basements, or you'll see a lot of houses here with finished basements. And a lot of people really utilize that space, workout space, extra living space, multi-generational family living. So we'll have a whole family in the basement with a kitchen, you know, 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, living room, fireplaces down there. It can be a really great man cave or teen hangout. So you get it, but it's a really, really great space. And basements are really, really a great option. So if you're joining us and if you have any questions about making a move or what it's like to live here or anything that's on your mind, let me know in the comments. We'll make sure that we get to them. Okay, here's something else that I didn't realize was different from living in other states and this idea was spurred by meeting with Darla and Victor today. So talking about attic access. So here in Georgia, you will always have access to the attic. And that access can look differently in different places of the home. But almost always, there's going to be pull down attic stairs. Oftentimes, we'll see this located in the garage. Sometimes on a two-story home, you're going to see this on the second level, sometimes in the hallway. Um, and so you're going to have those pull down attic stairs. Sometimes the actual furnace is located up in the attic, and where you change your air filter is located in the attic. So that's important to know. So you'll see attic access like this. And then here's some other options of how you can see attic access here in Georgia. All right, so let's look at this picture on the left-hand side. Maybe that's your right-hand side. I don't know, but it looks like the little thing in the ceiling. So that little scuttle hole, that's just a piece of drywall that you can pop it up and move it over. You would need a ladder to get up in there. Usually that is in the area of some place where the attic space up there is not that big, but if you ever needed to get access to the attic space, that's how you would do it. Sometimes we see these in garages. Usually these are found like on second story homes. Another option, if you'll see on the other two pictures, those little doors. Um, these are very, very, very common here in Georgia, especially on second levels. These are required by code, and this is providing access to the eaves of the house where the attic is. And it's my understanding this is primarily for fire-related code purposes, but by code, you have to have these little access doors. Sometimes you can put plywood down there on the bottom so you can like store some like Christmas ornaments or stuff like that. But really, there's not a whole lot of room there. But that is for fire code purposes. But that is something that I've learned is kind of unique-ish here to the Georgia area compared to other areas. All right, Jane asks, has the market slowed down in Georgia or is it still hot? And that is a great question. So it really depends on where you're looking. Things have slowed down considerably from the summer. And so over the past 6 to 8 weeks, maybe a little bit more, homes have been sitting for a little bit longer. And so the good thing that has transpired for folks that are on the buying side is that you're able to negotiate a better deal on a house than what you normally would. And this is not to say that these homes have devalued, but rather there's just not as many buyers in the marketplace right now. All signs are pointing to once we get past this election, towards the end of the year, first of the year, it's going to ramp back up again. And things I feel like are going to be very competitive. And we could be headed into more of a challenging market next year. So if you have the ability to buy before that craziness, then I would strongly encourage you and know that you can likely get a little bit better of a deal on a home now than what you're going to be able to if you're able to get a deal at all next year. It's my anticipation and conversations that I'm having with economists and other experts is that as those interest rates continue to come down, the demand is going to get higher and higher. Home prices are going to be driven back up. We're going to see competition again, and it's going to be difficult. There are still some pockets of areas when a house is in really good condition, it's updated, it's staged well, it's got really great photographs. Those houses sometimes are still selling for multiple offers, but that's definitely not the norm for the most part here in the Metro Atlanta area. Bullen asks, is it more difficult now to find two houses on one property for an in-law? Yes. Here in the Metro Atlanta area, it's very, very, very rare to have kind of like an ADU or a granny cottage, whatever people call those in other parts of the country. It's very unusual to have those here in Georgia. What is way more common, especially here in Metro Atlanta, is to have a finished basement. And there are some houses where that finished basement will actually have its own separate driveway and access. And I've even seen some that have its own garage. and driveway in the basement. So that's more so how multi-generational living does here. Occasionally you'll see kind of like a finished garage apartment for a detached garage, but those are so hard to find. And I think it's more so lots here are smaller, and you would have to go out and purposefully build that two property. So there's just not a whole lot of them there. When I've had clients that have searched for it in the past, there might be one or two options in the greater metro Atlanta area that kind of fit what they're looking for. But more so often we can definitely find what they're looking for if they're open to a finished basement or even finishing a basement. Usually an unfinished basement will always, not always, but most of the time have access to water. So it's pre-plumbed for a bathroom. If you're going for a full out in-law suite and you want like an extra washer and dryer down there as well, there's some more investigation that needs to be done to make sure that we can do that. Sean, planning on relocating from Utah to Georgia next summer, considering North Georgia areas, recommendations for cities where I can get 1 acre and space between neighbors. That's a good one. So there are some still really great areas where you can get an acre of land. If you're looking for something that's like heavily wooded at an acre, that's hard to find. To the east of Atlanta, a really great town, Monroe, you can get some really large parcels of land. I say large, an acre, 2 acres, and new construction for relatively still affordable. Gainesville is also a really great town where you can find houses on an acre. North of Cumming, Dawsonville, Jefferson, Brazelton, Houston, those are all some really great areas. So just the further outside of Metro Atlanta you go, the more options that you're going to have that will have that. And then, of course, kind of depends on your budget as well, because obviously having a higher budget gives you more options just because how home prices have gone here. Okay, yeah, Darla has a good point. Y'all are in the process of buying a house in Flowery Branch with great space between neighbors, and it's just over an acre. So yes, it's out there. It just kind of depends on what your definition is. Sometimes I'll have clients say, we want an acre of land and we don't really want to be able to see our neighbor. That's going to be very, very hard unless you're like in the mountains, and then that comes with its whole other host of pros and cons. So good input. All right, if you have any other questions, let me know in the comments. So let's dive back into some things that you can expect, and let's get into some things that you need to look out for whenever you're buying a house here in Georgia that may not be things that you have to look out for where you are considering making a move from. All right, so we talked about attic access. Here's something to know that is pretty common here in Georgia. So whenever you have your home inspected, the inspector is going to give you back a whole host of a report with a ton of things that are wrong with your house. And that's good because we want the home inspector to identify all the little things. There's going to be a lot of minor things, but really we want that report to call out big, major repairs. And there's some repairs or things that are going to be on an inspection report that I can almost guarantee you is going to be on the inspection report before we ever even look at it. And that's just because these are just normal things with houses here in Georgia. And one of them is having minor cracks in a sidewalk or on basement walls or on driveways. It's just a thing here. Concrete, as it settles, it's going to get these fine settlement cracks. Even brand new construction homes have these settlement cracks, even when no one's lived in it yet. And so it's normal. So here, this is directly from an inspection report from one of our clients that we recently helped. Jane, I think this is your inspection report actually. And this is calling out some fine little cracks in the sidewalk. And then if you'll see down here in this bottom right hand, left hand, I don't know how that is on your screen, steps, but you see those two yellow arrows, it's pointing to a little bit of a mortar crack where the brick is meeting the other brick, kind of creating a step. That mortar crack is very, very common. And over time, that crack is going to get a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. If you're looking at a house that was built 15 years ago, likely you're going to have something on that inspection report that says, hey, you should likely seal this crack. And that's something that you're just going to have to do periodically, every couple of years, just to keep water from getting in there, but it's just something that happens and it's very normal and it's a home maintenance thing to keep in mind. Um, this is a picture of minor cracks in basement walls. This is something that is very normal, and the home inspector is going to look for areas where maybe water might have gotten into it or is currently getting into it. That can, um, sorry, just a second, y'all. I've got a photographer taking pictures of a house that we're about to list and has a question about some light switches. Okay, so the big thing is that we want to make sure that this isn't a major crack in the foundation. Typically, that is something that's greater than 1/4 of an inch. We want to look for evidence of water intrusion. The home inspector is going to identify that. If it's suspected to be a water intrusion crack, then we'll call in some more experts to get their opinion on that. But just know that these are things that are going to come up. We can work through them. And for the most part, they're all relatively normal. Okay, here's something that's not normal, but could come up on an inspection report. And this is mold in basements or in a crawl space. We do have some homes here that are located on crawl spaces. And so this is actually a crawl space picture. And it's not uncommon to have mold start developing on the floor joist underneath a crawl space home. Now, this can be mitigated and taken care of, and it is something that you would want to get taken care of. And so a great home inspector is going to call out that evidence. And then, of course, we have some mold experts that can come in and give their assessment and expertise as well. But definitely know that it can happen. It does happen. This is example of mold growth on a joist down in a unfinished basement. And so with basements here in Georgia, you want to have a dehumidifier running. And sometimes I will have clients that will say, oh, this must be a sign of something bad if they have a dehumidifier in the basement. No, it's a great sign of a great homeowner, and that's preventative maintenance, preventatively to stop mold happening from your unfinished basement because you don't really have any air circulation or cool air running down there. There's mold experts that can explain this better than I can, and but having a dehumidifier is something that's a good best practice to prevent this. So if you're buying a house with an unfinished basement, it's definitely always good practice to have a dehumidifier running down there. Okay, another thing that you need to be mindful of when buying a house here in Georgia, especially if you are buying a house on a basement, that is to have a radon test done. So, radon is a gas that's naturally present in the earth, and there's areas of the United States that have higher levels of radon naturally, and that is because of um, the rock in the earth. So here is a map of Georgia. Some counties have higher concentration of radon than others, and so this is something the University of Georgia has studied. So basically, we want to test for radon. They're going to leave a machine in that house for a period of 48 hours that takes air samples like every 20 minutes or so. And then it's going to take the average of the air samples measurement of radon because it fluctuates throughout the day and what's happening with the weather and if it's raining and all that kind of good stuff. So if the level is greater than 4.0, the EPA recommends that that's something that we should install a radon mitigation system to get that radon gas out of the house and get it out from the basement and suck it out and above the house. And so this is an example of a radon mitigation system. So it kind of looks like a gutter on the side of your house. Usually they put them in a very, very inconspicuous spot so that usually on the back corner of a house so that you can't really see it. But that pipe is essentially sucking out the radon gas and depositing it above the house line. That thicker part of the pipe right there that you see, that is actually a fan that's creating that suction. So it's not uncommon to have houses here with radon. I would say about 50% of the homes with clients that I'm working with that have basements that we do the test on, about 50% of them do come back with higher levels of radon. Installing a radon mitigation system is fairly inexpensive, between usually $1,500, $2,200. And for the most part, sellers are pretty agreeable to contributing and or covering that cost of that radon mitigation system. So I'm curious, if you're watching from the live stream, is radon an issue where you live? Let me know. I've had some clients that have lived in Kentucky and areas like that before where they've dealt with radon. And then I've had some clients that are like, what's radon? And I'll be honest with you, I grew up in South Georgia. I have never heard of radon until I moved up here 10 years ago, became a real estate agent, and was like, oh, who knew? There's something that we learn all the time. All right, so if you're just joining us, if you have any questions about anything that we've covered or just making a move in general or the real estate market, let me know. I'd love to answer your questions. If you just want to say hey or have an opinion, tell me about radon in your area. I would love to get your insight. All right, so another thing that you need to be aware of about Georgia homes, and this is getting to be less and less and less of something that happens, and that is these are a type of shingles, and these are called Atlas Chalet shingles. They were a type of shingles that were put on homes, a lot of homes back in the 90s, and this was a defective shingle. Essentially, the granules on the roof shingle itself deteriorate much more quickly over time, and it's just a bad roof. So those shingles were recalled. They no longer install them on homes anymore, but every now and then we come across a house that has Atlas Chalet shingles. A great inspector is going to be able to identify an Atlas Chalet shingle right away. And so in instances where we've had homes that have had Atlas Chalet shingles, we've been able to work with the seller to come up with a solution. Oftentimes that is getting the roof replaced through their insurance company. So just something to keep in mind, but it's becoming less and less of a problem. And who knows, 10 more years, that will be a thing of the past because all of those Atlas Chalet shingles will have been completely replaced. All right. Another thing that you need to be mindful of is polybutene piping. So this type of piping was primarily installed in homes that were built in the 90s. So over 6 million houses had this type of piping installed. It's a type of PVC piping. Usually it has blue print on the actual pipe. Doesn't always mean it's necessarily polybutylene. And this is something that we need to be mindful of. The home inspector will identify that has polybutylene piping. Here on our seller's disclosures in Georgia, there's a question that says, does your home have polybutylene piping? Some sellers will say no, but they actually don't know. And some sellers, if they had the piping replaced, they'll disclose that. The reason that this is an issue or a problem is that the piping itself becomes brittle, it breaks, it causes leaks, can cause a ton of damage in your house. It's also very difficult to get an insurance policy if your home has polybutylene piping. So it's not 100% a deal killer with a house if it does have it. There's a lot of great plumbing companies around here that specialize in replacing polybutylene piping in houses. But it's just something to be mindful. If you're looking at homes that were built prior to 2000, they could have these pipes. So we need to be careful about that. Okay, here is another big major thing to be mindful of. And this, along with that polybutylene piping, is something that I actively look for when we're out with clients looking at houses, evaluating the health of the house and how great of shape it's in. This is a type of siding called LP siding. Louisiana Pacific was the name of the manufacturer. This was another type of product that was put on houses in the 90s. It's still on some houses today. It kind of looks like cement siding or hardy board siding, but it's actually compressed composite board, like fiber board. And what happens is I think I have a picture. Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell, but you can see where that person's glove is, how the bottom of the siding there is kind of curling up, lipping up. That happens because water has gotten moisture from rain has gotten into the edge of the underside of the board. And because it hasn't been sealed with paint, or just because over time the paint barrier goes away, the water gets in there and makes it swell and it becomes very brittle. So if you have a home with LP siding, you can go up and touch that siding and just gently touch it with your finger and it'll just kind of like crumble. And so if your home has LP siding, doesn't necessarily mean that you need to rip it all off and start over. It just means that you have to be extra, extra vigilant about keeping paint, keeping the gap sealed so that water cannot get into that and start that swelling process. A lot of homes you'll see they've replaced sections of the siding where this has been a problem. You can kind of see, if you study closely, the differences in the texture of the board or the slight differences in width of the board. But really, this is something to look for if you're looking at houses that were built prior to 2000. They don't make the siding anymore, so you don't have to worry about it on homes built after 2000, but definitely something to keep in mind because it can be pretty expensive. Like, there is no way to fix that board now other than just simply replacing it. Oftentimes you can't just replace one or two boards. You're having to replace, kind of that section that's there. Then you're having to repaint it, and then you have new paint next to old paint. It kind of creates like a domino effect of problems to watch out for. I'm curious, has anyone ever owned a house with LP siding, and did you have to go through the process of removing it or doing any type of repairs? Okay, here's another picture of LP siding. Okay. Of course, one thing that we didn't talk about that you have to be on the lookout for is termites. Oftentimes you have termite bonds in place on homes. For all of our clients, whenever we work with them, we have a termite company that will go out and do a termite company. They'll go out and do a termite inspection. And that's something that we partner with them. And then there's no cost to you as our clients to get that clear termite inspection. So that is something that you definitely want to make sure that you have done. Obviously, your home inspector is going to look for signs of termites as well. So you kind of have two people throughout that process, making sure that you don't have termites there in your home. Eric asks, prepping for a move to the Covington, McDonough area, how is the market during the fall and winter months? I think it's a great time if you're a buyer because you have a little bit more of a leg up. The disadvantage is that you may not have as many homes to choose from as you would in a spring market. But the trade-off is that usually there's less buyers out looking. The homes have been sitting on the market a little bit longer. Sellers are getting nervous because typically if a seller is selling their house in the fall or winter, it's because they have to sell. Otherwise, they would wait until the spring so that they can get the most amount of money for their house whenever there's, the most amount of buyers out. So you have the upper hand as a buyer in the fall and winter months. So you can kind of negotiate a little bit of a better deal. And yeah, so we would love to help you talk a little bit more through that strategy and help you with your purchase there in McDonough and Covington. So you can reach me if anyone's watching this and you're thinking about making a move. My contact information is directly below this video. Would love for you to reach out, kind of schedule a call. We'll talk through your plans, your goals, what you're looking for, and help put together a plan of how we can make that happen. Jane asking, Florida, we have hurricanes. What does weather issues does Georgia have? So we can get some good thunderstorms in the summer. And that was something that I learned from my California clients, that thunderstorms are essentially not a thing out there. And I had a client call me one time. He was like, do we need to do anything special or prepare? Like if we feel like, like something dangerous is happening. And I was like, no, this is just a normal thunderstorm and it'll be gone in 15, 20 minutes. But yeah, so we do have thunderstorms here. Occasionally during periods of really bad thunderstorms, you might have some tornado warnings. I've grown up in Georgia my entire life. I've personally never experienced a tornado. That's not to say that other people don't have that experience. And I will say that because of the terrain of Georgia, you will see more of those tornadoes kind of like Atlanta and South versus in more of the hilly, mountainous areas of North Georgia. So that's something to keep in mind. Occasionally, we will get some residual effects from hurricanes down in Florida as the storm moves up. We were really nervous about Helene that was coming through the area, and unfortunately for the people in North Carolina and South Carolina, that storm kind of shifted east, and so we just got a bunch of rain here from that storm. Um, the main concern for us here would have been trees, all that rain all at one time, and mostly just trees falling over. So we have a lot of trees here in Georgia. Um, Oftentimes there's trees fairly close to your house, especially if you live in a house that kind of backs up to some woods. We have, really great big tall trees that if they fall over, they could fall through the house. So I know Augusta got hit really hard with Helene, and that was kind of like the biggest issue was trees falling over, taking down power lines, knocking out power, falling on houses. So really, weather-wise, I would say that's pretty much it. In the winter, occasionally, if it gets incredibly cold here, and we've recently had rain, and that water freezes, if we get like a really deep, hard freeze, the issue then becomes again about the trees because the trees aren't used to holding onto that ice and the weight of that water. And so trees falling over. So I know there was it's probably 8 years ago during winter, kind of like an ice storm came through the area. And we were without power for a good 2 or 3 days because some trees had fallen and all over, or big tree limbs had fallen, taken out power lines, that sort of thing. So that's really it. Um, Eric's hoping to find a ranch or a house with a first floor master with some open acreage. Yeah. Oh, okay. So astronomy, that makes sense. um, are fires an issue? No. So fires are not an issue, thankfully, unless it's, a house fire that you yourself have caused or accidentally caused. But no, we don't deal with any fires. Occasionally, during times of like extreme drought, there will be burn warnings. I don't know if this is a thing in Florida, but here in Georgia, especially in South Georgia, people will burn their trash sometimes, or they'll burn yard debris. So like leaves and yard limbs and things like that, instead of hauling it away, they'll burn it. And so sometimes like during periods of extreme drought, there'll be, a ban on outdoor fires. But that's never been a thing. I say that though, growing up in South Georgia, there was a time period where the Okefenokee caught on fire several times. And I remember in high school, we couldn't go to school because the smoke was so bad in the air. And this was in Valdosta, which was like 2 hours from the Okefenokee. Yeah. And there was just so much smoke that you couldn't see. So buses couldn't navigate, that sort of thing. So yeah. But here in North Metro Atlanta area, no fires. Awesome. Well, y'all had some really great questions, and I really enjoyed spending time with you tonight. If you haven't already liked and subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and do that. If you know someone that's thinking about making a move to Georgia, if you'll help them and send them a link to my channel, that would be so appreciated. I would be honored to help them. And of course, you, if you're thinking about making a move. We publish videos every single Monday here on the channel. If you're not following me over on Instagram, follow me there. I'm posting all kinds of great things about what's happening in the area, news, some funny things. At least I'm trying to be funny, or sometimes we come across and put some funny things out there. So it's just my name on Instagram, Sarah Maslowski. But I look forward to staying in touch. If you have any questions in the meantime, you can reach me via the information directly below this video. And I will see you on the next video that comes out this Monday. And of course, I'll see you here in just a little bit next 2 weeks on a Wednesday for another live stream answering all of your great questions. Thanks for joining me tonight. I appreciate it.